An American author with the really fantastic name of Studs Terkel wrote a book called Working, and in it he said this: "Work is about a search for daily meaning as well as daily bread, for recognition as well as cash. In short, for a sort of life, rather than a Monday through Friday sort of dying." Terkel understood that when work becomes just about the money, it can suck the life out of us. Getting paid is important, but we don't want to feel that we're just cogs in a revenue generation machine. We want to feel that our work means something and helps us grow. And Terkel understood this on an intuitive level, that feeling that we matter and that our work is valued and valuable are vital to our well-being. And now there are piles of studies showing this to be true, and we're going to talk about some of that research today. Today we'll be focusing on the spiritual dimension of well-being, which is about developing meaning and purpose in our work and in our lives as a whole. This is a dimension of well-being that law firms and lawyers may tend to overlook, in part because they don't know the research yet, but also because lawyers tend to narrowly favor ration and logic. They may view emotions, intuition, and spiritual connection as topics sort of in the realm of rainbows and unicorns that they feel a little less comfortable with. This blind spot to the full scope of well-being may offer at least one explanation as to why many in the legal profession aren't fully thriving. The science on the subject is pretty striking and really suggests that lawyers will benefit from cultivating more meaningfulness in their lives and work. Really, the importance of creating meaningfulness in our lives can hardly be overstated. Research shows that it's profoundly important to our happiness and our health. It's associated with many things that we care about, like better emotion regulation and better mental health, better cognitive functioning, and even longer lives. Meaningful work is then an important subcategory of meaningful life. It can either boost or detract from the sense that our lives are meaningful. In surveys that ask people what makes their lives meaningful, the top answers are most often people and work. Meaningful work itself contributes to many positive effects that we care about, both as individuals and as members of teams and organizations. It's a big driver of engagement and job satisfaction, and also mental health. I've now been talking about meaningful work for a few minutes without defining it. Let's turn to that now. If I asked you how to define meaningful work, what would you say? Multiple scholars have been working on this very question, and they've come up with slightly different responses. But the gist of all of their definitions is this: that meaningful work is a judgment that our work is significant within our own value system. This includes facilitating our personal growth, contributing to others or the greater good, or accomplishing worthwhile goals. This definition focuses on meaningfulness in work, meaning that it flows from the work itself. But meaningfulness also is derived from our workplaces, especially from interactions with the people we work with. So when we think about meaningful work, we're talking both about meaning in work and meaning at work. A feeling of significance is what drives the experience of both meaning in work and meaning at work. We feel that we matter and that our work matters. This sense of significance is boosted mainly in three ways. First, work feels meaningful when we're growing toward our full potential and that our strengths and skills really matter. This includes feeling a sense of authenticity, self-concordance, self-expression, and contribution. Second is a sense of having a positive impact or purpose. We feel that we're benefiting the greater good or contributing to people that we care about. You can see from these first two buckets that meaningfulness is derived from this interplay between feeling individually valued and valuable and also being other-oriented, of wanting to feel that we're having a positive impact on others. The third source of significance comes from our workplaces, and especially how we're treated by other people. Rewarding interpersonal interactions help us feel that our work is meaningful. This includes a sense of belonging, feeling appreciated, treated fairly, and feeling that our work and job roles are valued by others. All of these things play big roles in our experience of meaningful work. I'd like to take just a moment to dispel a popular myth about meaning and purpose. So many people treat it like it's an Easter egg hunt or search for a soulmate. that there's one perfect purpose out there waiting for us to find it to be happy. And I have to confess, when I was younger, I fit this description. I thought I was destined for some unique purpose, and I just needed to follow my passion, and one day I would find it and I would be happy. My view now is that that's just wrong, and it pretty much ensures discontent and unhappiness. What brought me to this conclusion was gaining some maturity and life experience, as well as reading a lot of psychology research, as well as Viktor Frankl's moving book, Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl tells us to stop searching for the meaning of life and start creating meaning in life every day. Meaning is created, not found. We may not ever know why we were placed on this floating ball in the middle of space, but what we can do is create meaning in our lives and in our work every day. This happens through a continual dynamic process in which meaningfulness is created or destroyed. Through our own daily behaviors, each of us has a huge impact on ourselves, on each other, and whether meaningfulness is enhanced or diminished. And this really is good news. It means that meaningfulness isn't the result of some fixed personality traits or a particular aspect of a job. The experience can be cultivated. This process of creating meaning is highly affected by everyone around us. It's affected by how others treat us, whether we feel valued, whether we feel our work is valued. What this means is that meaningful work is not a solo sport, it's a team sport. In the process of creating meaningfulness, with all of its powerful effects, we're all in this together. When I talk about meaningful work in the legal profession, people often immediately think of pro bono work. And pro bono work is great, it's commendable, and it certainly can help people feel that they're having a positive impact in the world and in their communities. But I focus more on everyday activities with our clients and colleagues because that's where we spend most of our time and attention. If those interactions are drained of significance, our work will start to feel meaningless and we may be headed for burnout. So, what I'll be focusing on today are our daily choices that we can take as individuals, team members, and leaders to cultivate more meaningfulness in our jobs every day. Studies have found multiple ways to foster the experience of meaningful work, and I'm going to focus on just a few of them. These 5 pathways are especially important. They come from studies on theories like task significance, pro-social motivation, and self-determination theory. The first pathway of meaningful work that I'm going to talk about is internal motivation. So motivation isn't on an on or off switch. It's on a continuum, and it's affected by why we are engaging in a particular behavior. If you are engaging in a behavior because someone is micromanaging you or bossing you around or inspiring fear, well, that's pretty low quality motivation, and it can lead to poor mental health, low resilience, and burnout. We have high quality motivation when our behaviors are self-concordant, when they align with our goals, values, and preferences. The next pathway to meaningfulness is satisfaction of our need for autonomy. We feel autonomous when our behaviors are aligned with who we are. We act with a sense of volition and choice, rather than feeling coerced by external pressures like bossy managers, or coerced by internal pressures like guilt or protection of our self-worth. Next up is positive impact, and this is probably what most of us think about when we think about meaningful work. And what this means is that meaningfulness flows from the feeling that we're benefiting others. Next up is connection. Through the connection pathway, we experience meaningfulness from feeling that we're cared for and that we care for others and that we have a sense of belonging in groups that we care about. Last, it's mastery. Work will feel more meaningful when we feel competent and effective and capable of learning and growing. It can start to feel meaningless when we feel that our actions really don't make any difference, when we're made to feel inadequate, or when we're feeling bored and stagnant because we're not growing. All of these are important pathways to fostering the experience of meaningful work. But for today, we're going to focus mostly on the first three, on internal motivation, autonomy, and positive impact. Now let's get to some practical strategies for fostering meaningful work. There's no one-size-fits-all formula. As the earlier definition of meaningful work reflected, whether we deem our work significant is tied to our own values and preferences. So what we find meaningful may not be meaningful for others. But there are some common themes in what makes work meaningful. So the best approach will be to try a variety of strategies and see what works for you. First up, I'm going to talk about 3 strategies that cultivate the sense of meaningfulness through the pathways of internal motivation and autonomy. These will help us feel that our work and lives are aligned with who we are, with our values, goals, interests, strengths, and talents. An ability to intentionally shape our own attention is a key skill for meaningfulness and well-being. Now, this may sound a little weird or dry to you, so just please hang in there with me for a minute and let me explain. One of my really important psychology mentors is a brilliant guy named Dr. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, which I know is a bit of a mouthful. He's one of the founders of positive psychology and created the concept of flow. From his work on flow, he came up with some really profound ideas about what makes people happy and what happiness even means. He considers our use of attention as key to our happiness. He said, the control of consciousness determines the quality of life. His point is that we have only a limited amount of attention, and we can invest it in a lot of ways that can either enrich our lives or make us miserable. Only a fraction of the stuff going on in the outside world, and even in our own bodies and minds, make it into our conscious awareness. We are constantly being bombarded with stuff trying to use up some of our limited attentional bandwidth. We use up a lot of our attentional bandwidth on things like just reacting to other people and reacting to other people's demands, worrying, comparing, ruminating, and just being unfocused or distracted, by like those 1,000 emails that are sitting unread in your inbox right now. We often invest less attention to the stuff that we say we value and find interesting and enjoy. The stuff that fuels our autonomy and internal motivation. The point is that we can create a better life by managing our attention and more intentionally choosing our thoughts and behaviors. This can enhance our sense of autonomy and foster internal motivation by enabling us to more intentionally choose things that are more aligned with who we are and who we want to be. We'll be better able to consciously and intentionally choose behaviors that are aligned with our goals, values, and interests. And this, in turn, will enhance our experience of meaningfulness. So what all this means is that improving our ability to control our attention, to focus on stuff we value, is really important. So how can we do that? One way to do it is to cultivate mindfulness. Mindfulness has basically gained movie star status in the legal profession recently, so you've probably heard of it. The basic definition of mindfulness is becoming aware of our thoughts without getting wrapped up in them. One important effect of mindfulness is that it helps us control our attention so that we can be more intentional in how we interact with the world. Mindfulness allows us to be more aware of our thoughts without just reacting to them. So it creates this mental space or gap between our thoughts and emotions and our behavior. This then gives us the power to choose our behavior, to choose behavior that aligns with our values rather than just being reactive to whatever's going on around us. The alternative to mindfulness is mindlessness. It's like being a human bumper car when you spend all of your hours of all of your days just reacting to what other people want and how other people treat you, or just complying with our mental habits built up around work. This is a recipe for meaninglessness and burnout. To create more meaning, we need to get to know who we really are, including things like our values and priorities, and then acting on them, right? Acting in alignment with them. Starting a mindfulness practice can help with this. Another thing that can help is to prioritize positivity. That's what the research calls it. I think a better name might be to prioritize your priorities. What the research shows is that people are happier when they make specific plans to do more things that they know boost their positive emotions, meaning, and purpose. This isn't really a big shocker, right? People are happier when they actually plan and do things that make them happy. It sounds simple, but how often do we actually do it? So consider this. Starting tomorrow, create a plan for next week and actually commit to it. Make a plan to engage in more activities at work and at home that align with your values and interests, rather than living mindlessly on autopilot like a human bumper car. The research suggests that this will boost your sense of meaningfulness and your well-being. So that was the first meaningfulness strategy under the pathway of internal motivation and autonomy. And now this is the second one, identifying our strengths and using them in new ways. There's now so much research showing that strength strategies boost well-being. The reason that it relates to internal motivation and meaningfulness is because when we use our strengths, we feel like we're contributing our authentic selves at work. It's a form of self-expression. And when others recognize and invite us to use our strength, we feel valued for who we are. There's now been lots of research on strengths activity that have found all kinds of positive outcomes. Things like well-being, job satisfaction, engagement, performance. And according to the research, it's important to not just identify and use your strengths, but to use them in new ways. That will really give us the biggest bang for the buck. One of the most commonly used strengths assessments is called the VIA, which is made up of 24 character strengths. You can easily find it online and it's free, so that's great. When you're done, you'll get a report showing the rank ordering of your character strengths. On your report, take a look at the top 5 or so strengths. The ones that stand out as really capturing who you are called your signature strengths. Using these strengths more can be especially energizing. There actually has been a VIA study of U.S. lawyers, and it found that, on average, lawyers' top strengths included judgment, curiosity, love of learning, fairness, honesty, and gratitude. So if you're a lawyer, it's likely that you'll have some of these toward the top of your list. Now the question is, what do you do with this information? There are many possibilities for strengths activities for you to do individually or in a team, and I'm going to share just one. So first, list 3 to 5 activities that you do most frequently at work. So things like attending meetings, answering emails, talking to clients, researching, whatever it is that you do a lot of. Then write down one way that you can use any one of your strengths with each of these work activities. So for example, if you know a meeting is likely to be boring, you can think about how you can use your curiosity or love of learning to stay engaged. Activities like this can help you squeeze more meaning out of even some of your more mundane daily activities. For more ideas for strengths activities for you to do either individually or as a team, you'll find a number of books and other resources online. We've now reached the last strategy under the internal motivation and autonomy pathway. This strategy focuses on developing a leadership style that supports high-quality motivation. I say this strategy is for leaders, but don't interpret that too narrowly. I'm not referring just to people who have some kind of a formal leadership position. Anyone who works with others and wants to encourage them toward common goals can benefit from this approach. It can apply to leader-follower relationships, but it also applies to colleagues, clients, and even our family. Autonomy support is a key part of high-quality relationships. It can bolster the experience of meaningfulness by helping people to feel that they're respected as people and valued for their unique strengths and contribution, that they matter and their work matters. In our leader roles, we support followers' autonomy by inviting them to fully contribute their talents and strengths to meaningful goals and support their growth. We do this by using all the meaningful work pathways that we talked about earlier, by fostering others' internal motivation, supporting their autonomy, acting in caring ways, and helping them to feel effective and competent. The opposite of an autonomy supportive leadership style is a controlling approach. This is a top down hierarchical style in which leaders feel like they know best rather than encouraging participation and contribution from others. These kinds of leaders motivate through orders and fear rather than appealing to values, purpose, and goals. They assume that people mostly can't be trusted and expect compliance, rather than understanding that people really are trustworthy and encouraging questioning and voice. They micromanage to avoid mistakes rather than listening, coaching, and teaching to enable people to grow. And these are rather cold, more arm's length kind of transactional relationships rather than warm and mutually respectful. When we act in controlling ways, we communicate to others that we don't really trust them and that their unique contributions aren't invited or valued. They're just sort of robots carrying out our orders. And this just doesn't work well for knowledge workers like lawyers who are so personally invested in their work and really need to be to do excellent work. But many leaders still settle on this more controlling style because, frankly, it's less work. Coercing people can be way easier than influencing or inspiring them. And it's true that this style can be effective in the short term. If you're in a position of power over someone, they're going to do what you say out of fear. But it won't inspire true ownership and commitment. And it's more likely to result in burnout and poor well-being. Lots of research shows that autonomy-supportive leadership is the better approach to support well-being as well as inspiring real commitment and ownership in the work. One recent example is a study that was published in 2018 that reviewed nearly 80 studies on how leadership styles affect work attitudes and motivation. And what it found is that autonomy supportive leadership has a big and positive effect on things that we really care about, like well-being, job satisfaction, organizational commitment, and performance. The good news is that studies also have identified concrete, practical ways that leaders can be more autonomy supportive. There are many possible ways to do this, and I've picked just 4 behaviors that you can adopt right away in almost any context. Many of the behaviors are not particularly difficult or time-consuming, but we just forget to do them consistently in the rush of our busy days. Autonomy-supportive leadership requires us to slow down a bit and be more mindful of how we powerfully impact others by all the little things we do or don't do, intentionally or unintentionally. The first behavior is to avoid using controlling language, and this is really easy to do if we just take a little time to think about it. And research shows it can have a big impact on perceptions of autonomy support. So what this means is that we should avoid giving orders or pressuring with demanding language. In short, don't be bossy. Think about saying please and thank you rather than communicating through orders and curt instructions. And remember also the power of nonverbal communication, which studies show has a bigger impact on the meaning of the message conveyed than the words themselves. Controlling messages can be strongly conveyed through facial expressions, silence, and tone. Also, pay special attention to your emails, where a lot of bad behavior tends to occur because we often just shoot them off hastily without giving much thought to their impact on the receiver. Always remember that there are living, breathing people on the other end of that email who care deeply about whether they're valued and accepted by you and their team. So before pressing send, reread your email and ask yourself whether the message is likely to bolster or thwart the pathways of meaningfulness, of making people feel cared about, competent, and trusted. The next practice is to take their perspective and show empathy. Acknowledge and validate their emotions and reactions. An example would be if you have to work late unexpectedly or over the weekend. You might just acknowledge, like, yep, I know this stinks and I'm sorry, but it's important for the client, so let's figure out how to get it done and do a great job. If instead you convey verbally or non-verbally that they should just suck it up because they're paid a lot of money, well, this doesn't feel very autonomy supportive. Ignoring followers' responses and emotions or treating them as irrelevant feels controlling. It suggests that you don't really understand or care about them or their situation. It can feel like you're just using them as a means to your end. So try to communicate that you understand their perspective and let them know that you care about it. We also should try to give rationales for what's going on. So remember that in autonomy-supportive leadership, what we're trying to do is bolster followers' autonomy and internal motivation. What we want is for them to feel that they're making choices aligned with their own values and goals rather than just doing what they're told. A rationale provides followers with an opportunity to understand and agree. So, for example, in a situation where you have to work unexpectedly over the weekend, a controlling leader might just say, "Get this to me by Monday," in a 6-word email with no personal greeting. But an autonomy supportive leader would give a rationale and say, "I'm sorry about the late notice, but we need to get it done by Monday. It just came up for the client and it's really important." This then gives me as a follower an opportunity to agree that it's important. I might not be thrilled about the tight deadline and the weekend work, but I'm able to choose to do it willingly because my leader provided a meaningful rationale for it. The next strategy is to personalize our messages to our followers. We want to seek to influence or shape how they connect to their work by talking about how it aligns with their own strengths, interests, goals, and values. When we talked earlier about high-quality internal motivation, we saw that motivation is on a continuum, and people are the most energized and committed when they feel that their work expresses who they are, when it's personally important to them or they enjoy it. This is a very important strategy, and to carry it out effectively, we need to get to know each of our followers personally. We need to know what inspires them, what motivates them. We need to understand their strengths, values, and goals, and what they're interested in. We then should leverage those in how we assign and talk about their work. We also should remember that their values, goals, and interests are likely very different from ours. We all have this basic bias or implicit belief that everyone thinks just like us and is motivated by the same things as we are, but it's just not true. We all have a full portfolio of different things that we value and find motivating. As leaders, it's our job to figure out our followers' motivational portfolios so that we can shape their work experience so that they feel energized to do and be their best. So, for example, some lawyers might be energized by the pursuit of excellence in the work itself, like writing a beautiful brief. Others may get a big boost out of hearing how their work helped the client. And still others may love the idea of having an opportunity to build close-knit relationships with you and the team. Each follower's motivational portfolio may be a little different, and to be effective leaders for them, we'll want to match our approach to their goals and values. Dwight D. Eisenhower captured the core message of autonomy-supportive leadership when he defined motivation as the art of getting people to do what you want them to do because they want to do it. This is precisely what effective leaders do when they seek to tailor work, workplaces, and the framing of the situation to align with their followers' strengths, abilities, talents, and values. When instead leaders use bossy language, micromanage, and use other forms of coercion, they communicate to followers that their unique strengths and talents are not invited or valued. That approach seeks to get people to do what you want them to do because you said so, rather than because they want to do good work themselves. We've now covered the 3 strategies to cultivate meaningfulness through the pathways of internal motivation and autonomy. Now we're going to talk about strategies under the positive impact pathway. There's loads of research finding that we experience work as so much more meaningful when we feel that it benefits others in some way. I'm going to give 3 science-backed strategies for using this pathway to make work and workplaces more meaningful for ourselves and for our teams. A strategy that we can use every day to foster a greater sense of positive impact is to do little acts of kindness for our colleagues, clients, and others that we work with. This is easy to do, and it can boost our energy and meaningfulness by feeling that we're benefiting others. To get the most out of this strategy, you'll want to plan ahead and do acts that are a bit outside of your normal routine and that you'll enjoy doing. Also, take time to reflect on your good works and savor them a bit. What you don't want to have happen is that you lose an opportunity to squeeze all the meaningfulness out of your acts of kindness by just charging through the rest of your busy day without giving yourself a few moments to feel good about your kindness. A recent workplace study found how powerful little acts of kindness can be. The study asked participants to do 5 acts of kindness for coworkers over a 7-day period. They could be large or small, anonymous or not, and could be about anything, including contributions of time, energy, or money. The researchers gave participants a list of ideas to carry out their kindness missions, and these were pretty simple to do. They were things like helping a coworker complete a task, or bringing someone coffee, or simply writing a thank you note. The researchers found that giving in this way boosted a number of the pathways of meaningfulness that we talked about earlier, as well as job satisfaction, and the givers also had fewer depressive symptoms. The researchers also found that all of these little acts of kindness gave a positive jolt to the workplace. Co-workers who were on the receiving end of the kind acts didn't know that they'd been selected as targets of kindness, and they weren't asked to do anything as part of the study, but they did anyway. The study found that the influx of all the little acts of kindness ignited a pay-it-forward effect. So co-workers who were the beneficiaries of the kindness increased their own acts of kindness by a whopping 278%. This shows that a pretty simple activity can have a big impact on our work cultures. Many more studies have found that people who regularly engage in acts of kindness have greater well-being and sense of meaningfulness. And by treating our colleagues and clients as valuable human beings, we perceive our work as more valuable and worthy, which in turn makes our work feel more meaningful. The second science-based strategy under the positive impact pathway is to channel our attention to amplify or make more salient the importance of our work and the value of our contributions. We can do this either for ourselves or for others in our roles as leaders. When we do it for ourselves, it's called cognitive crafting. And this just means that we take the time to focus our attention on the benefits of our work. This can apply to all kinds of jobs and tasks. For example, research shows that people with a high commitment to their work are able to squeeze out all the meaning of even seemingly tedious tasks. For example, a hospital janitor in one study framed her job as not simply mopping floors, but as creating a healing environment for her patients. We also can help others see the positive impact of their work, and this is called framing. It's an important skill for influencing followers' motivation. In fact, one leadership scholar characterized framing as an essential leadership skill. He said the first responsibility of a leader is to define reality, and the last is to say thank you. A major way that leaders define reality for their followers is by framing the work, which means as leaders, we explicitly interpret situations and call attention to meaningful things that might otherwise get missed or not be understood as important. Although many jobs, especially jobs within the legal profession, have a great benefit on others, followers can be too distracted by their piles of work to notice or too distant from information about how their work makes a difference to others. So as leaders, it's part of our job to make that salient for them. Through framing, we can help our team members squeeze out all the available meaning in their daily activities. So we can talk about how their contribution is important, how it fits into the larger framework, how it helps achieve important goals for our team or our firm or our clients. And we can make sure that they know the benefits that flow from even the undesirable parts of their work. The paragon of tedious work for lawyers, I think, is document review. But to frame this, we can remind lawyers that document review is an important stepping stone to understanding litigation, and that it's critically important to understanding the case and protecting our clients. When we take just a little bit of time to say these things out loud to our followers, we help shape their reality and make their work more meaningful. We've now reached the final strategy to boost meaningfulness under the positive impact pathway. And this strategy is to connect more with clients and in ways that we can learn about the positive impact of our work. Research has found that connecting more with clients and hearing about the positive impact our work gives a big boost to our experience of meaningfulness and engagement. A really interesting study that reflects how powerfully client connection can impact us was conducted in 2007 by a well-respected researcher at the Wharton School named Adam Grant. For the study, Professor Grant worked with a group of college students whose job was to make telephone calls to solicit donations to raise money to fund scholarships for students who wanted to attend their school. This isn't necessarily among the most interesting or meaning-packed jobs, and it's often filled with rejection. Here's what Professor Grant did. He invited one scholarship recipient, who was a beneficiary of the student's work, to come in to speak to a group of the student callers. For only 5 minutes, the recipient talked about how the scholarship had made a difference in his life. Professor Grant then followed up a month later, after the scholarship recipient's visit, to see what had happened, and what he found was pretty amazing. On average, the caller's time on the phone making calls increased by 142%. This resulted in an average increase of 171% in revenue raised. The average caller's weekly donations increased from $186 to $503. For the group of students who went about business as usual, making their calls without having a scholarship recipient come talk to them, well, their performance didn't change. The study reflects that coming face to face with living, breathing people who communicate with us about the positive impact of our work gives a powerful boost to meaningfulness and to motivation. There are many strategies that we can use to remind others and ourselves of how we positively contribute to others and the greater good through our work and through our work-related interactions. Some ideas for supportive behaviors include things like coordinating meetings with clients, and ideally asking the clients to talk about the positive impact of your team's work. You can regularly tell other lawyers how their work has benefited you or the firm or your clients. You can tell stories or solicit letters from clients that describe how your team's work has been beneficial. These kinds of simple strategies can have a powerful impact on lawyers' sense of meaningfulness, and it also has the collateral benefit of building high-quality relationships with your clients. Everybody wins. How might you begin to connect more with the beneficiaries of your work? We've now reached the end of the strategies we're going to talk about today for fostering the experience of meaningful work. So let's do a quick recap. We focused on 2 pathways to meaningful work: internal motivation and autonomy, and then positive impact. Under the first pathway, we talked about channeling your attention to align with your values and goals, using strengths in new ways, and being more autonomy-supportive. To bolster the positive impact pathway, we talked about regularly doing acts of kindness, framing our work and work of our followers to highlight its positive impact, and connecting with beneficiaries of our work and hearing about how we've helped them. The strategies that we talked about today highlighted that when we get trapped inside our busy schedules and trudge through our days on autopilot, we might unintentionally destroy meaningfulness for ourselves and those around us. Many of the strategies for fostering meaningfulness are not hard and don't cost any money, and they're deeply important for full well-being. You might be familiar with the common saying that no one on their deathbed ever said, "I wish I had spent more time in the office." This has never sat well with me. We invest so much of ourselves in our work that it shouldn't be a source of a deathbed regret. If you focus more on meaningfulness, work may be more like Stephen Hawking's vision, which is that work gives you meaning and purpose, and life is empty without it. If you want to learn more strategies for cultivating meaningfulness at work, as well as engagement, check out my book, Positive Professionals, which you can find on Amazon.com.